Good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Lim Tiam Singh lecture series. My name is Ben Kashor, and I'm the Lee Ka-shing Professor in Public Management and Director of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy's Institute for Environment and Sustainability, IES, or as we say, eyes. So our motto is we're eyes on the world. Is the logo up there? Well, you'll see the logo at some point, but we've got a really cool logo. There's two eyes, and there's two pupils in the eyes. And one is a leaf, and one is the world. And that's our motto. And the eyes was established just under 2 years ago to expand and build upon the Institute for Water Policy, which has a 15-year legacy of conducting applied research in the policy sciences, as well as in governance scholarship, to think about knowledge that can be generated to address critical challenges facing water use, supply in Singapore, Asia, and the world. The Institute of Water Policy is now the Center for Water Policy under eyes. And we have 4 thematic areas: water and oceans, climate and energy, biodiversity and land use, and sustainable livelihoods, recognizing that whatever happens on the sustainability front, we must always think about the people who are being impacted by these challenges and bring along the most vulnerable in our society. So that's eyes, and we have 2 key arenas within eyes that help us achieve our mission. So one is the Center for Water Policy that brings us here today, and the other is a related Climate Policy Design Lab. And from PUB to many agencies in Singapore, recognition that whether it's water, whether it's biodiversity, the climate challenges affect us all. And this lab is meant to generate insights drawing on the Institute's legacy around policy design for addressing long-term policy challenges. So that's eyes, and while we're here in the historical context, I want to highlight that this event today is made possible by the generous endowment gift from Mr. Lim Tiam Singh to IWP. And Mr. Lim is the founder of the Chip Eng Singh Corporation Limited, and over the years has played an instrumental role in the group's journey from a sole proprietorship into one of the leading main contractors and property developers in Singapore today. Just a couple of remarks before I turn it over to our keynote speaker. A 2016 UN World Water Development Report on Water and Jobs highlighted, and you all know this already, but I think it's important to reinforce given the topic today, that 3 out of 4 jobs worldwide are water dependent. We know that water is a fundamental enabler for the creation of jobs that relate directly to its management or indirectly in water-dependent sectors, including, of course, agriculture, power, and industry. And as important, especially given I's mission, water is essential for the life and health of people and the planet, and goes to the heart of what we seek to achieve through sustainable development. So given the very significance of water and livelihoods, today's lecture brings to the fore questions about the future of urban water workforce. We want to identify workforce-related challenges, but also opportunities that are unique to the urban water sector, and to provide directions for how the sector could respond to these factors to achieve sustainability in all of its dimensions: environmental, social, economic, financial, and of course operational. These questions are expected to be relevant to a wide variety of stakeholders within and beyond the sector, including policymakers, industry, current employees in the water workforce, as well as, and a really important theme for today, those who we should be enticing to join the water workforce. And so today we are honored to have Mr. Perry Rivera deliver a keynote lecture for us. And this lecture will be followed by 2 thematic connected panel discussions. Our panel discussants represent a diverse and renowned group of individuals who have significant expertise and wisdom and insights to share, given their unique involvement in the urban water sector. And with this, I invite you to experience the full program today. And now I pass the time to our keynote speaker, Mr. Perry Rivera. Welcome.
First of all, I'd like to obviously thank Ben, Corinne, Cecilia for inviting me to deliver this keynote. Obviously, it is a pleasure and honor to be invited by this institution. I've been exposed to Singapore for quite some time. In my first exposure, I was in the electronic manufacturing services. When I got this invitation, obviously I found the topic, emerging jobs in the urban water sector, very complex, difficult, but quite interesting. Human capital is very close to my heart. That's why I'm also involved with SWA's mentorship program. I thought, again, the world is changing, and the water sector, especially the urban water sector, is not isolated or operate in a cocoon. It is impacted by major key changes or disruptors or accelerators. The key messages that I have would be, there are, in my view, several key drivers of change that could transform how the workforce will evolve. Obviously, I cannot project precisely what would happen, but the trajectory you can already deduce from the discussion. Number two, the workforce must adapt, okay, for the water utility of the future. And what would be the approach that can be adopted by three principal players? That's the government in terms of enabling policy, industry leaders, and obviously the professionals thinking of trying to join the water sector. I think I'd like to end by describing the competency model that will play a key role as the industry evolves. I just want to share with you that I'm developing this lecture from the perspective as a former Chief Operating Officer of a water utility, that's Manila Water. We have 18 projects in 18 urban areas in Southeast Asia. Majority would be the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and 2 large-scale projects in KSA. That's the footprint that I have been exposed to, and I was fortunate enough to be exposed there. So that's the limitation, and that's where the perspective that I will share. But before I tackle each of the bullet items, I think it's very important to distinguish between urban water utilities in developed countries and also developing countries. Okay, key features there is the asset on the ground. Major difference in developed countries. Obviously, it's well developed. In emerging countries, sometimes it's non-existent. Okay, the technology being adapted is way advanced already, as you can see in the case of PUB and other leading utilities. Institutions, governance, and leadership, different. The way they engage with communities, and by the way, at the end of the day, tariff setting. These are just very important items that we need to consider. So, if you look at, for example, PUB, which I have been exposed to for more than 25 years, they were already thinking, the first time I met the operations director, Mr. Kong, if I'm not mistaken, they were already thinking about embedding technology. They were embedding circularity principles when the concept was not yet popular, like or embraced by a lot of stakeholders. In developing countries, obviously, very basic water supply chain will have to be obviously invested. So let me share with you 2 utilities I've been exposed to. United Utilities is the largest water utility in UK under Ofwat and addresses 7.4 million people. Then you have the east zone of Metro Manila, operated by Manila Water, that's also nearly 7.5 million people. But look at the difference in asset base. 48,000 kilometers of clean water pipeline. Okay. In Metro Manila, where we operate half of it, it's only 7,000. Okay. So I think it's very important to obviously make this difference. So which brings me to the framework for analysis that I adopted. Go over very briefly the challengers, the drivers of the change, and try to paint a picture how this is disrupting the workforce of the utility. I will end by sharing with you a few ideas on how public policy can be framed, how the industry leaders, and I will be hard on industry leaders because they will play a key role moving forward. And more importantly, if you are a university graduate, senior about to enter the labor force, you will face a crossroads. Do I enter the infrastructure space or non-infrastructure? If I enter the infrastructure space, is water for me? That's very major decision that will have to be made by the younger people. Water is a very complex interrelationship with society, real economy, okay, and also the environment. That's why it's a complex web or labyrinth of interlocking relationships. And solving the water problems, that's why it is described to be a wicked problem. Very complex, and you need multiple disciplines to really find a way to address it. Okay? So, what are the factors, not just population increase or climate change impacting, for example, the Philippines? There are quite a few. First would be rising customer and stakeholder expectation. When I started, to be honest, after 25 years, you have a different set of stakeholders that want transparency, demand a lot from the water utility. Once you give them 24/7 potable water, you cannot go back to intermittent water supply. Okay, and by the way, it's becoming more expensive to invest in new technology and maintain it. It remains to be energy intensive, and you will have, at the end of the day, who will pay for the water bills? The whole taxpayer base or the customers benefiting directly from the service? That's a public policy issue that governments will have to handle. Climate change, we've discussed this already many times, okay? It is one of the most popular topics right now, okay? There's too much water in the Philippines, too little, and by the way, it's polluted, okay? So that's the typical issue and effect of climate change in countries like the Philippines. Not to mention, it's an archipelago of 7,100 islands. Okay? The service that we're providing, Metro Manila, wow, that is not even thought of in a far-flung island in the Philippines. So what sort of technology that we can embed in that far-flung? Obviously, no one should be left behind. Okay? Compliance and regulatory pressures. The standards being imposed, for example, in developed markets, PFAS, the forever chemicals that you have to remove from the water source, is a very expensive proposition that each utility must retrofit, okay, to be able to comply with that. In the Philippines, we're being asked to remove nutrients, ammonia, phosphates, and nitrates. Very expensive. We will have to engage a lot of consultants to help us remove that. And by the way, that's 3 times more expensive than a typical wastewater plant that we have, conventional water treatment plant. Someone has to pay for that. Okay? Technology. Obviously, my benchmark here, how it is embedded, is Singapore PUB and other utilities like DC Water and other leading utilities. Okay. demographic trend in Manila, when we started, there were 10 million people. In a couple of years, we will be 20 million people in Metro Manila and still growing very fast. And demand and urbanization will continue to grow. But at the same time, the major issue there is water supply insecurity. There's a mismatch between the resources that you can develop and obviously the rapidly growing demand. Weak governance usually results in that mismatch. A strong governance have a long-term perspective. It's amazing when I read the Long Island project by Singapore PUB. That's a 50-year plan. Okay, so our long-term plan in Manila Water will only take us to 2047, a rolling 25-year plan. But you have a government that thinks about 50 years. Okay, incredible. Okay, that's the benchmark that I think very important to address a demand that is growing very fast. Okay, this slide is Metro Manila. The blue one is the largest freshwater lake in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia. You could put the land area of Singapore on top of it. That's just to give you an idea. That's the lake. And this is evolving to be a major source for Metro Manila. The red one is the urbanization rate in 2003, 2015, and 2050. Okay? In the southern part where I live. So you could just imagine urbanization rate growing rapidly and will have an impact on water resources. Then you need to master plan these things. Okay? Which brings me to, I know you're aware, it's not easy to master plan water because of political economy considerations. Okay? You have to deal with politicians, convince them that this is the right way to move forward. And by the way, when you cascade it down, your solutions, water is so context specific. There may be trade-off at the global level, country level, regional level. So that's where politicians have a role to play in this water space. Their skill set in trying, hopefully, align diverse, sometimes conflicting objectives will have to be managed well. Cost of provision. Those factors that I just mentioned will one estimate by the World Resources Institute. The developing world needs over $1 trillion to attain SDG 6. That's only 7 years away from, or 6 years away. In the case of the Philippines, we need $2 billion every year. Okay? Ultimately, that gets reflected in the retail rates. Okay? So, what is also interesting is what's happening in developed markets. I found this study very interesting on Germany. They modeled the demographic profile in country migration and the aging population. So you could just imagine if one particular area is being depopulated, then the cost of provision, unit cost, will go up significantly. What is interesting is I've dealt already with Japan. I have a few friends there. The major issue in Japan is their customer base will continue to go down. Philippines is 117 million as we speak. In a few years, we will outpace Japan, and it will eventually be 80 million people. And you have to collect water bills against a lower base. Who funds the increasing cost of maintaining that infrastructure? That's a major public policy issue. Uncertainty, well, there are scientists and top-notch economists no matter how complicated the model is, there is still the error term of your model remains to be a major factor. How high will the sea level rise around Singapore? There's a guesstimate there. Okay? So, out of that uncertainty, very important, systems thinking. You need discipline or several domain expertise trying to work together to sort out these very complicated interactions of variables and model it. Okay, so new modeling techniques will have to be developed. And by the way, who will pay for it? And they say the 3 T's in funding water utility operations: tariff, taxes, transfers. Or we get ODA from Japan, for example, for developing countries. My personal view, having been involved in 5 price reviews, at the end of the day, you need to convince the customer base. It will be the customers who will pay for it. Okay. So that's the first point. The second point is how these factors impacting the workforce of the urban utility space. Okay. One would be, if you look at it, there are functional areas. One would be water resource management, building the infrastructure. That's also a very complex set of players. Then delivering water supply and sanitation. Very important. Okay. It has become more complex managing this supply chain. What I can get or deduce from my research is that, one, there's a mismatch between supply and the supply of talents and the quantity and quality, because the industry is in a state of flux right now. The job content is changing. Under my watch was over 1,000 people 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Now you will see that the job content has changed dramatically. Manila Water, being one of the leading utilities in Southeast Asia, had to invest in Manila Water University so that we can tailor a program appropriate for new graduates. We recruit 30 to 40 top graduates of the universities in the Philippines. But that's basic training. They go through a boot camp for about a year, exposed to the whole supply chain, so that they develop that expertise to handle various challenges in delivering water supply and sanitation. So, as I said, insufficient number, not well trained, but can absorb a lot of inputs, and it is incumbent upon utilities, organizations, the schools, to train them well. Okay. So what are the reasons for gaps? I won't go through this one by one. One would be a policy gap. Okay. The curriculum of educational institutions is so generic right now and not attuned to the challenges being faced by society, especially water crisis or water insecurity. Okay. There's obviously a mismatch there. Number two, there is war for talent, as you know very well. Okay? Industries will try to attract civil engineers to work for construction in industry, and that is a threat for the water utility business. I recall I attended the IWA Congress in Brisbane in 2010. There was a major drought, but the mining industry, the extractive industry, was booming. And it was a major concern for the professor, a major concern for the Australian water sector because, well, the people are living because they get to 3 times more than what the industry can. That will have to be obviously addressed. Okay, in developing countries, I think basic engineering or STEM training is par for the course. Okay, then when they enter, I hope there is an industry association like Singapore Water Association, where there is an industry level program that mentors these new graduates before they enter or join the firm level or their new employer. Recently, as early as probably before COVID, World Bank came up with a concept of water utility of the future, with particular focus obviously on developing countries. And Manila Water was one of the certified companies that can qualify as water utility of the future. There are basic characteristics. One would be inclusive nature. One would be being able to deal with various stakeholders, embedding technology, and by the way, already adopting circular technology in your operation. That remains to be work in progress in the Philippine water, especially the leading utilities. But this is now the new model. So from the conventional, basic, simple water supply to this utility of the future, you're talking about a major transformation or change. You need a skill set that in leadership and governance that manages that change. Otherwise, it will be disruptive. Okay? So transitioning to water utility of the future entails risk because investment decisions of players will have to be made. Some jobs will be created, some jobs will be destroyed. And managing that process requires a leader that is visionary, okay, but whose capability, who knows the details of running a utility. I recall I had the chance to interact with PUB friends, and they said, you know, adopting this new technology, it's very important to handhold our employees because their pace of learning is different. Okay, it is not a homogeneous workforce. Okay, so you need to tailor fit your training program for these talents. These are just some of the capability, new, interesting, exciting fields that can be pursued by younger people entering the water space. I met John Briscoe in 2010 in Boston. He was one of the pioneers in terms of establishing a solid relationship between the economy and water. And he coined this term, specialized integrators. You need to be specialized in several domains that allows you to cross across boundaries and leverage your knowledge base so that you can have solved a very difficult problem. I think this is the current lingo of HR practitioners is a T-shaped manager. He coined that term, essentially describing it more than a decade ago. Okay? I won't preempt the discussion of the second panel, but this is my take on technology and innovation. One for developing countries would be, what is the appropriate technology that I should adopt? Because if I adopt the leading edge, it may not be affordable. Number two, it might result in it might not sync well with my overall organizational design. Again, the Philippines has a nearly 20% of underemployed professionals. These are people that can still absorb more work. So the industry leaders will have to, in public policy government, should balance that actually. Okay. STEM, obviously, as I mentioned, and this quote from the Chief Technology Officer of whom I met several times. Please let me underscore, behind the change process would be people. That's the object and subject of a change process. If you manage that well, okay, all the new gadgets, new hard assets that are put in place will be productively managed. Okay? So what's the strategic approach? Which brings me to this transformation. Okay? I think government must establish an enabling framework. It has to review what would be the educational policy that will cater not just to the water sector, but in general cater to the needs of the economy that must survive and thrive within a new operating environment. And political leaders play a key role here in aligning public policy. Okay, industry leaders will have to play a key role, training and development. Okay, I think it cannot be just, for example, Manila Water training its employee who will eventually get poached by another utility. That's a zero-sum situation. The industry players will have to collaborate, and I like what I've observed in SWA, that you need to be training the next leaders, convince them that the industry is, you can have a career out of the industry, in the industry. I think rebranding, and this is the role of the industry, rebranding the water sector so that it's attractive to these new cohorts is a major challenge for industry players. How do you make it attractive? Make it digital. Okay, embrace digital so that it's attractive. When it is viewed as a boring utility, then it is not attractive for young people. And over dinner last night, we were discussing, have you met a kid that says he wants to be a water supply manager? Well, a kid in the States will probably say, Ben, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a policeman, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer, I want to work in Silicon Valley. There's no water there. So there's no TV series on water. Okay? George Clooney will play a key role here. We need a George Clooney in the water sector. Okay? Very important. At the professional level, this is very close to very important. We can only advise young people, but ultimately, it's their decision to establish a career in the water sector. Okay? But we need to provide information, make them aware. Okay? That's why I'm involved as a mentor. But I will also learn. I like reverse mentoring because I will learn from young people. Okay? So what are if you look at the job clusters that are being developed in developed markets, it's exciting, and it's just a matter of time that developing countries, as they go up the economic ladder, will eventually be having those job roles. Okay? So, we can have 8 factors in a competency model, but I'd like to zero in on 3. First, leadership. These people, Lee Kuan Yew, former President Fidel Ramos, really transformed the sector, faced a lot of opposition, but their political will made a difference. Their political will was a major reason why PUB is arguably the leading utility. President Fidel Ramos created a new market for PPP, which was the first in terms of BOT, telecom deregulation, and water privatization. He played a key role. And I'd like to mention Mr. Aquino, who was my mentor for 15 years. He was the CEO of Manila Water. He was instrumental in transforming the former public employees to one of the best in the world in terms of efficiency. So his basic approach or strategy is very decentralization and empowerment, alignment of social and business goals, and total management system so that you can push down the accountability at the lowest level. Critical thinking, this is par for the course, but no one can solve the problem right now. You need to collaborate with a lot of stakeholders within the water space, but you also need to reach out outside the water space to solve our internal problems. Okay? So, to those people who are relatively young at the juncture or crossroads of choosing a career, I mentioned to Corinne, I wanted to change jobs to career. Big difference. Jobs is that I want this job because I get paid, I have some good time at the end of the week. A career requires alignment of your mission, career aspiration, your value system, and the space, the industry that you will have to spend your career on. This morning, and this is my last statement, what a coincidence. The headline of Wall Street Journal is that they conducted a survey of 25,000 university graduates, and they look at them 10 years later. 50% are underemployed because they are in the wrong job. So very important is choosing your career in the university. Apprenticeship will have to be institutionalized because your first job is so critical, whether you're fully employed or underemployed. On that note, thank you very much.